The urban dreamscape is a practice that I crafted when I was initially 17 years ago, when I was living in New York City. And the impetus was a desire to live in sacred space. So I was doing my master's degree at the time, and I was living in the East Village. It was a massively urban environment. And I had this strong desire to participate in sacred space. And I thought, God, I need to go somewhere where there are trees and marvelous rock formations, and I can see the stars. And I really fought against it for a while, and it finally occurred to me, well, the trick to living in sacred space is to sacralize the space in which you live, to actually move forward from yourself and make your own space sacred. And so I began this practice, which I conceived really in a flash. It really just came to me, and I started it all in one big motion. That said, it really does have 4 primary sources, and I want to talk to you a little bit about those 4 primary sources. The first is art of memory, and art of memory is an ancient Greek method for remembering things. It's a mnemonic, and it was invented by Simonides in the 200s BC, I think, and it's used mostly by orators, both ancient Greek and Latin Romans during the time of the Roman Empire, to memorize things. So you might want to memorize a speech. So right now I'm talking to you, and I want to talk to you about the 4 sources of my practice. So I want to talk to you about art of memory. I want to talk to you about Australian Aboriginal Dreamtime practices. I want to talk to you about psychogeography, and I want to talk to you about Sufi beliefs. So I might, in my head, I would form what's called a memory palace. And a memory palace is, it uses imagination and visualization. And imagination and visualization are key both to all of the sources that I'm going to talk about today and also to my own practice. And as you hear the rest of this, you'll hear this again and again and again, imagination and visualization. So what you do to use art of memory is you create a memory palace, and you use imagination and visualization to create an internal space in your mind's eye. And you should learn it as well as you know the inside of your own house. If you came home and someone had moved your couch over 3 feet, you'd say, what's with the couch? You should know the inside of your memory palace as well. And you always walk through it in the same order, and it's got sort of defining features. So let's say my memory palace has a front hallway, and then that goes into a study with a divan, and then that goes into the kitchen with a big oak table, and from there into the back hall with a big stained glass window. And I want to remember the 4 sources that I want to talk to you about. So what I would do is, in my mind's eye, I would visually and imaginatively associate the idea of art of memory with the front hallway, with some feature of the front hallway. And then the Australian Aboriginal Dreamtime I've laid across the divan in the next room that I'm walking into. And then I want to talk about psychogeography, and that's some image associated with psychogeography. So I might imagine Guy Debord, who was the originator of the Situationists, sitting on top of the oak table. And then I've got my Sufi imagination, and I might imagine a whirling dervish in the back hallway by the stained glass window. And then when I want to remember what the talk is, what the points of my talk are, I imaginatively walk through my memory palace in order, and as I look at things, and as I look at them, I see, oh, there's Guy Debord on the table. That's my next point. Okay, the next thing I would naturally walk into, would be the back hallway. Oh, there's the stained glass window with the whirling dervish. So that's art of memory. That's the first source. The second source is Australian Aboriginal Dreamtime practices. I'm sure a lot of you know a lot about this, so forgive me if there's a little repetition here with your existing knowledge. But the way that the mythology of Australian Aboriginal people works is that in the original time, the creator has a dream. And from the undifferentiated mass that is the land, emerge all of the prototypical beings. The first wallaby, the first ants, the first snakes, the first people. And they move around on the surface of the earth, and their actions and interactions are what form all the topographical features. So over here, the ant people and the wallaby people have a fight, and they kick up what are the hills. And over here, the rainbow serpent slid through the ground, and now that's a riverbed. And over here, the first people slept, and now there's a depression in the ground where they once slept. So if you were an Australian Aboriginal woman and you were pregnant, you would, the first time you felt the baby kick, you would mark the spot and go and get an elder. And the elder would come and find out which of the paths of these original animals the baby first kicked on. So if I kicked on the path that the wallaby took when it was moving around, then the baby is a wallaby dreaming. There's other dreamings that one can be. There's a clan and family. So this is really only one feature of a fairly complex system. But the wallaby dreaming, the path that the wallaby took to form that earth, is called a songline. And there are notes. It's a song. There are notes for every one of the features, right? So the hills that were kicked up by the fight with the ant people have a few notes. And these remarkable stone structures that are the bodies of dead wallabies have a few other notes. And this riverbed that has scratch marks on it where the wallabies, scratched it is another note. And if you learn the song that is your dreaming, you learn the song line of the wallaby, and you walk it and you sing the notes for the various features. And in doing that, you're recreating creation constantly. What a walkabout is when a young man on initiation walks a great length of his songline, re-singing the world back into existence by singing the song of what the wallaby did. So, and when somebody is singing songline, when they're walking, they're understood as being in the dream time. You are actually superimposed over this world is the time of the dream of the creator. So you're actually in the creator's dream when you are walking on the songline. So this world is superimposed over ours, and the portals, the symbols, the mnemonic of creation and of the space between these two worlds is actually encoded on the topographical features. So Australian Original Dreamtime, that's my second source. The third...
Sorry, could you say that again?
Sure.
It's called what?
Well...
Everything you just explained?
You would most easily find it if you were looking up Australian Aboriginal Dreamtime. That would really be the best description. And songlines, if you're Googling, toss in songlines. The third thing I want to talk about here is psychogeography. Psychogeography is a practice that was invented by the Situationists in the mid-50s. The Situationists were an art collective, a political art collective in Paris. Guy Debord was the fellow that sort of first defined psychogeography. And what it is it's the energetic and psychic relationship a person has with his or her environment, particularly an urban environment. The core of psychogeography was a practice called the dérive, and that means drift. And what you do when you're practicing a dérive is you're moving through your urban environment, either an environment that you know, and doing things to highlight your relationship, to make you notice the city, or else walking paths that you don't usually walk to note your relationship to the city. Maybe in this area there's a lot of glass and concrete buildings, and you have certain feelings about that. Or maybe here there's a lot of graffiti that you think is quite lovely, and that's a different relationship you have to the city. And maybe here is where you saw a really bad car accident, so you have a relationship to that place as well. And what the psychogeographers were doing was both trying to be attentive to the world around them, and also trying to do things to affect it, having happenings or ways that you would influence the city to change your psychic relationship to it. It's partly a mindfulness practice, right? So the situations where you're walking along in a city and you're often like, okay, I gotta buy tomatoes at the store. I need to call my mother. Oh, look at that guy. He's a weird looking guy. And what the situationists are trying to do is get to pull you out of that mental blah 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 and make you actually see the city and think about it, and think about how does this part of the city make you feel? What's your relationship to this atmosphere? And then how do you change that? So that's psychogeography. And then my fourth source, which I will talk about really only briefly for time's sake, is from Sufism. I'm sure most of us know the Sufis are what most Muslims would say a heretical Islamic sect. They're the sect that gave us Rumi, the wonderful poet, and whirling dervishes are also Sufi. And Sufis believe that Imagination is actually a faculty of perception. Now, we in the West tend to think of imagination as not real. Oh, I imagined it, or she just imagined it. It's imaginary. And what the Sufis are saying is no, in fact, imagination is a faculty for perceiving certain things that are numinous, right, that are non-material. So the Sufis certainly believe that Allah exists, but you're not going to be able to perceive Allah in your sort of puny human mind. And so what you do is you use imagination to develop a relationship with Allah, maybe casting Allah as the beloved, for example, and having a love relationship with your imagined version of Allah. And a lot of what I was talking about earlier, the 3 points of practice, and through that relationship is how you actually come to know Allah and develop your relationship. So imagination is a faculty and not just a making something up. So those are my sources.